Hello and welcome. We're glad you're joining us today for the launch of the International Energy Agency's new special report on the path to a new era for nuclear energy. I'm Jethro Mullen, head of the IEA's communications team, and I'm joined today by IEA Executive Director, Dr. Fatih Birol, and by our Director of Energy Markets and Security, Keisuke Sadamori. In fact, Keisuke oversaw the team of IEA experts that has spent almost a year working on the analysis for this new report. The IEA also held a conference on nuclear energy in September with governments, industry, investors and international experts, which served as an important input for this report. So, during today's event, Dr. Birol will make some opening remarks, and then Keisuke will present the key findings of the report. We'll then take questions from journalists. For the journalists taking part in this press webinar, we invite you to send your questions via the Q&A function in the Zoom. You can do this at any point during the presentation, and we'll also take a 2-minute break right after the presentation for you to enter your questions. And with that, I'll hand over to our Executive Director, Dr. Birol.
Thank you very much, Jethro. Greetings to everybody from International Energy Agency headquarters in Paris. Today, we are going to talk about nuclear energy, a secure and clean energy source for many countries around the world. Dear colleagues, some 3 years ago, we said nuclear may make a comeback after the Fukushima incident. We have seen there was a strong decline in the interest of nuclear power, but 3 years ago we have seen some signs that nuclear might be coming back. And today, I believe that nuclear is making a strong comeback. We see multiple signs of a new era emerging for nuclear power across the world. It is the reason we made this report, and we look at the outlook for nuclear power and what are the challenges to see the new era for the nuclear energy in the countries around the world. So what are those multiple signs that we believe that we may be entering a new era for nuclear power? I would like to give you a few of them. Number one, nuclear energy production throughout the last 50 years show a lot of zigzags in this trends globally. But we expect this year, 2025, nuclear electricity production will be the historical high, the highest ever, driven by the new power plants come online in China, in Korea, other countries, and also restart of some of the nuclear power plants in Japan, in France, and others. So this is number one, the highest ever nuclear electricity generation in the history this year. Number two, on top of that, today there are 70 gigawatts of new nuclear capacity under construction. It is very rare, and my colleagues tell me that it is one of the highest levels, the 70 gigawatts under construction in the last 3 decades. Another important sign for the new era. The third one, more than 40 countries around the world, they have now concrete plans and projects to start or to expand their nuclear industry around the world. We have never seen such a great political interest and commitment from the countries since 1970s when we hit the first oil crisis. Another important driver. And fourth sign from our point of view that we may be entering a new era is as a result of innovation, we are seeing these small modular reactors getting a lot of attention and activity around the world. And our analysis, I will tell you in a few minutes, our analysis on the small modular reactors make us believe that the first commercial small modular reactors may be in operation around 2030s. So these four major blocks, developments around the world, make us believe that we may be entering a new era for nuclear power. And of course, when we look at also the demand side, the world will need a lot of electricity. Electricity demand is growing very strong and will be even growing stronger, mainly driven by the industry sector, air conditioners, electric cars, data centers. So we need to generate electricity to meet that growth in the electricity demand. The lion's share of the future electricity mix growth will come from renewables, solar, wind, hydropower, geothermal, and the others, but we believe nuclear can make an important contribution here. So, dear colleagues, on one hand, we see this new era coming, but on the other hand, we also see the geography, the landscape, global landscape of nuclear power, and the country's position in terms of nuclear power is changing as well. Nuclear industry, starting from 1970s up to now, has been led by United States, Europe, Japan, and others. They are still very important players, but as a result of the countries, the US, European countries, and the others, turning their back to nuclear power, we are seeing that another country, which is China, going in front of those countries. Before coming to China, maybe I should mention what happened in the US or in European countries. Two things. One, the political appetite for nuclear was not so strong to push the nuclear projects. On the other hand, the nuclear industry in these countries didn't perform well. My colleagues who were the leading analysts for this work, Brent Venner and Aaron Cham, told me that they look at all the recently completed projects in US and in Europe, and they have been completed, these projects, with an average of 8 years of delay compared to the original plans, and at 2.5 times their original cost. So much later than planned and much more expensive than they were planned originally. So there is a major issue of the performance of the companies in the nuclear companies in the US and in European region. So this is another reason why we have seen the decline of the share of nuclear power in the US and Europe. And Europe is in fact very impressive when you look at the numbers. Europe was a leader, and in the 1990s, 35%, more than 1/3 of the electricity in Europe came from nuclear power. Today, it is less than 25%. And in 10 years of time, it will be less than even 15%. And China. Chinese government has a continuous and a stable policy to push nuclear projects, and today half of the nuclear power plants under construction in the world are Chinese. And as a result, a major change. Within 5 years of time, China will overtake United States and Europe and will be the #1 nuclear power in the world. And this is, of course, something very important to note. So we, in our report, we not only look at the power plants, but we look at the supply chains. Because why nuclear power is chosen by many countries is it is the energy security, stable electricity prices, climate change. And when we talk about energy security, we should also look the critical supply chains for nuclear power. Dear colleagues, when we look at this part of the our report, which is very well documented, we find out that today about 40% of global uranium enrichment capacity is in one country only. 40%. A big dominance, which is Russia. So it is very important that we see a diversification of the enrichment capacities around the world to have a secure energy source like nuclear, to have a full picture from A to Z, being a diverse, secure and clean energy source. I have two last points. One of them is on the small modular reactors. I mentioned to you that we see SMRs are coming strongly, driven by many factors, including to feed the electricity demand in the data centers in US and elsewhere. And we are expecting, we have been talking, as my colleague Mr. Mullen mentioned, since 1 year with all major SMR companies, discuss with their experts. And our expectation in terms of cost reduction is a bit less rosier than the SMR companies themselves, but we still think that in about 15 years of time, the cost of SMR will be similar to the cost of offshore wind, large-scale hydro, and depending on gas prices, the gas turbines in many countries around the world. So cost effectiveness is another advantage of SMRs, in addition to their flexibility and being easier to build compared to large-scale nuclear power plants. And of course, when we talk about the financing, this is my last point, we see that the SMRs can have a better access to financing, given the, especially with the data centers, given the higher credit rating of the technology companies. But talking about the financing, which is a key hurdle for the small modular reactors, we think there is an important role for governments here. What are the roles for the governments? I am sure my colleague, Mr. Sadomari, who is our director for energy markets and security, will talk about this. We would like to see governments who want to see nuclear power built or expand in their countries, first of all, to have a strong, clear, long-term vision and commitment. It shouldn't be stop and go, because nuclear is a bit different, technology is a bit different than the other energy options we have on the table. So a clear vision and commitment to nuclear power. In terms of the financing, de-risking measures from governments would be very important with the long-term contracts and other measures so that the revenues at least partly guaranteed by the governments. And we would also like to see the governments for the safety regulation. They are very important. But for example, when we talk about the small modular reactors, they may need to be adjusted compared to the large-scale nuclear power plants, given their different nature, in order to not to unnecessarily increase the cost of the installation, and of course without making any single compromise from the safety concerns. So, dear colleagues, once again, I would like to thank all the colleagues, all the friends who are following this webinar. But our message is clear. We are seeing, as International Energy Agency, a start of a new era for nuclear power, and there are several clear reasons and signals across the energy, economic and political spheres. With this, I turn back to my colleague Jethro Mellon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Birol. And now Keisuke Sadamori, the IEA's Director of Energy Markets and Security, will present the key findings of the report. Keisuke.
Thank you, Dr. Birol. Thanks, Jethro. So, following our 2019 and 2022 reports that explore the nuclear's energy potential role in future systems, this latest report outlines the path to a new nuclear era, addressing energy security and the climate challenges. It also examines the critical component for success, including policies, innovation, and financing. Nuclear energy is a well-established technology, but has faced a number of challenges in recent years. In 1997, nuclear energy was at its peak in advanced economies. So Europe met over 1/3 of its electricity needs through nuclear, while nuclear accounted for over 30% of electricity in Japan and nearly 20% in the US. At the time, the nuclear's contribution in Russia was lower, and in China, it was just 1%. But since then, the energy landscape has transformed. In advanced economies, the electricity demand rose by over 20%, but nuclear generation fell by more than 10%. The EU's nuclear share declined to 23% by 2023, with many reactors shut down. Japan's share dropped after the Fukushima accident, but is now recovering as reactors restart. The US maintained the stable nuclear share. Meanwhile, in emerging markets and developing economies, electricity demand tripled and the nuclear generation more than doubled. So Russia's nuclear share steadily increased, while China now operates the third largest nuclear capacity globally. But there are many signs of further changes from growing policy support, rising investments, and technology innovation. The rising demand for clean and stable power from data centers is a new driver for nuclear energy growth. Data centers' load profile is typically flat and stable, and this aligns very well with nuclear power's consistent output. Recently, data centers have been increasingly active in supporting new nuclear projects. And this is particularly evident in the growing interest in the small modular reactors, SMRs. SMRs can offer a more localized energy solution by being built closer to demand. Our bottom-up research identifies plans for up to 25 gigawatts of SMR capacity, almost all in the US. But interest is also growing globally, including announcements in various countries such as India, Sweden, and the UK. Additionally, the strong credit ratings of large technology companies create favorable conditions for financing the SMR projects. And this synergy between the sector's financial stability and the SMR's modularity provide strong momentum behind the technology. Beyond data centers, SMRs are also being considered to meet the rising electricity demand and the decarbonized heat of many other sectors, and not only in the United States, but in many other regions. Building on these the announcements along with policies and plans, we developed an in-depth outlook for SMRs. This is the first one by the IEA. The United States leads SMR innovation with several companies developing the technology, and technology firms are planning to use SMRs to power data centers. China, already operating and building SMRs, is on track to lead with 3 key designs for electricity, heating, and desalination. In the EU, many countries including France, Czech Republic, Sweden, and Poland plan to integrate SMRs alongside the large reactors, complementing renewable growth. India sees SMRs as vital for decarbonizing industry and replacing coal-fired power plants. The UK is developing both large and small reactors for its energy security plan. These markets will account for nearly 80% of the global SMR capacity by 2050. Developing economies, including Southeast Asia and Africa, also view SMRs as attractive due to lower upfront costs. By 2050, about 1,000 SMRs are projected worldwide, delivering 120 gigawatts of capacity with $670 billion in investments. Achieving this depends on innovation, reducing costs, with SMR reaching cost parity with large hydro and offshore wind by 2040. Faster cost reductions could enable an additional 70 gigawatts of SMR capacity by 2050. Now, the global nuclear capacity is projected to double to 870 gigawatts by 2050, driven by policies in over 40 countries and to address energy security and climate concerns. Lifetime extensions add around 150 gigawatts, or the 20% of global capacity by 2040. This reflects decisions to extend the operations of many reactors in the last 5 years. As of end of 2024, nearly all US reactors have applied to operate up to 60 years, and many up to 80 years. Japan allows reactors to operate beyond 60 years, and efforts are underway to restart several. France and other European nations enable reactors to remain operational for up to 80 years. Large-scale reactors contribute over 500 gigawatts of new capacity by 2050, with 2/3 of growth in emerging markets and developing economies. China drives this expansion, contributing to over 1/3 of global additions, and is expected to have the largest nuclear fleet by 2030, surpassing US and Europe. In advanced economies, the rise in SMRs and new construction of large-scale reactors built on time and on budget only just offset the effects of retirement of an aging fleet. As a result, capacity is only slightly higher in 2050 than today. SMRs gain traction, accounting for 15% of global capacity by 2050. Even with nuclear capacity doubling, its share of global electricity generations remains below 10% to 2050 as electricity demand grows even faster. The nuclear landscape is shifting, with the market leadership moving away from advanced economies. From 2017 to 2024, 52 nuclear reactors began construction globally, and China led with 25 reactors of domestic design, and that is followed by Russian design with 23. In advanced economies, only 4 reactors were started, 2 in the UK using European designs, and 2 in Korea with national technology. The rise of SMRs and the new large-scale reactor construction offers advanced economies a chance to reclaim leadership. By 2030, the share of reactor designs from Europe, US, Japan, and Korea increases from 10% to 45%, and surpassing 60% thereafter. So large-scale reactors drive market leadership and complemented by a growing market for SMRs. Advanced economies could dominate the SMR market with over 60% of installations from 2025 to 2040. Leading developers are advancing SMR technologies, planning domestic projects and exports. China's capacity additions are expected to peak in the 2030s and then decline, reducing its global market share by 2040, despite the ongoing domestic and international constructions. A more competitive nuclear market with a diverse set of technology providers benefit countries aiming to expand the nuclear energy in their strategies. Since 2010, the global nuclear energy investment has more than doubled to over $60 billion. This growth is driven by increased construction of large-scale reactors in 2023 and the cost overruns in advanced economies. So significant investment has also gone toward the lifetime extensions in the US, France, and Japan, recognizing the cost effectiveness of extending reactor lifespans. The global investments in nuclear energy must double from 2023 to $120 billion by 2030 in order to deliver the growth as described. While most funding supports large-scale reactor constructions, $25 billion will fund the first SMRs coming online in the 2030s. And lifetime extensions contribute less due to the current high level of activity. Over 25 years, the global nuclear investment reaches $2.5 trillion, and 2/3 will fund large-scale reactors. Over 1/4 goes to the SMRs, and less than 10% to lifetime extensions. And then next, we explore how these investments will be financed. Nuclear projects are difficult to finance due to their scale, capital intensity, and long construction times. And this has meant heavy involvement of governments and typically a major role for the state-owned enterprises, SOEs. This is especially pronounced in China and Russia, where all new nuclear investments are made by SOEs, as well as in other emerging and developing economies where the nuclear development is primarily developed by SOEs. In the future, the SOE continues to drive the investment decisions in emerging and developing economies. But a shift toward the SMR development sees a growing role for the private sector, particularly in advanced economies, where the investments made by the private companies continue to surpass those of the SOEs, accounting for 58% of investments between 2036 and 2050 versus 52% today. So public funding alone will not be sufficient to build a new era for nuclear, and the private capital will be needed to scale investments. And the investments in lifetime extensions and the SMRs are expected to enable more commercial and private capital to finance nuclear. Investing in large-scale nuclear power plants requires a significant upfront commitment, with profitability taking up to 20 to 30 years to achieve. And this extended timeline, combined with high construction costs, often exceeding $10 billion, can deter private investors, especially during the lengthy construction phase. the track record of building on time and on budget also has to be re-established. On the other hand, the SMRs could present a compelling alternative by potentially reducing the payback period by up to 10 years. If by 2040, SMRs achieve the same cost per megawatt as larger reactors, they could in turn attract greater investment by generating earlier cash flows. Unlike traditional large plants, SMRs have a smaller ticket size, around $2 billion, which makes them more accessible to private investors. For the SMRs to reach their potential, it's crucial that the initial projects progress steadily and become operational as quickly as possible. The shorter construction period, standardized designs, and earlier cash flow prospects also allow developers to potentially be able to seek refinancing even during the construction. So, when we saw rapid growth for nuclear energy in 1980s and 1990s, electricity systems were regulated, and the main risk was rather over-investment. But this is not the case anymore, and the investments in nuclear as well as other technologies can be more challenging. So, alongside the need for industry to build new projects on time and on budget, policymakers need to take steps to reduce uncertainty for investments and de-risk them to the extent possible, plus faster innovation and streamline regulations. And these steps can clear the path to a new era for the nuclear energy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Keisuke, for the presentation. So we now have time to take some questions from journalists. So for the journalists taking part in this press webinar, we invite you to send your questions through the Q&A function in the Zoom. And we're just going to take a 2-minute break to give you a chance to send your questions, and we'll be right back. Thanks. Welcome back, and thank you very much for the questions. We're getting quite a lot, and we're going to get through as many as we can in the time we have. So first of all, there's a few questions on SMRs, small modular reactors that Dr. Birol and Kesuke both spoke about during their remarks. So from the Associated Press, Annie Rudder asks, is there clarity around the cost of electricity generated through SMRs in real-world conditions? If so, what is it? If not, is that a concern for developing countries looking at SMRs as an option because of potentially lower upfront costs? And then also a question from Tom Weingartner. I believe, I don't have his outlet to hand, but he's asking, in what country do you expect the first SMRs to go into operation? Excuse me, we also have a more general question about the timing of SMRs from Borut Tavkar in Slovenia, saying that Slovenia's second nuclear power plant a decision will be taken in 2028. Will SMRs be dominating at that time? So a few SMR questions there for the colleagues, and then also one around investment. And I'm just trying to find where that one is. Sorry. So in terms of interest from the private sector, are private investors really interested in nuclear now? And what are they, with all the research done for this report, what were they telling you that they need in order to put real money into nuclear now? Dr. Birol, perhaps you can speak a bit about those points on the SMRs, and Kesuke on what the private investors are looking for.
So thank you. First of all, colleagues, as I said, we made a detailed analysis of what the SMR costs are and where they can go, how low they can go in the years to come. We have discussed this with the SMR companies, had a good discussion. We made our own analysis and calculations. We think that our own rather conservative expectation is in the 15 years of time. So let's say the time for the cost to decline, SMR costs can come around between $60 to $80 per megawatt hour, and as such it can be competitive, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, with the large scale hydropower and also offshore wind, and depending on the gas prices with the gas turbines. So there is we expect a cost decline. And once again, I want to underline our expectation of the cost reduction SMRs is much less optimistic than those are the SMR companies themselves. Where are the SMR they are going to be built? First of all, we already have SMRs in China and Russia, and we expect in the advanced economies it will start in United States, also driven by the technology companies' interest in SMRs. In Canada, we expect those. And for the developing countries, where the electricity demand grows very strongly, SMRs can be a good option because of the first upfront cost, as my colleague Mr. Sador mentioned, is much less than the large-scale traditional nuclear power plants. Of course, this cost decline can be even steeper. It means it can have a more optimistic view if the advances go stronger than we expect. It could help to build them in series and repeating the one after another, building the supply chain. It can also help the regulations are designed in the most appropriate way. But with our conservative assumption, it is we think the $60 to $80 per megawatt hour, and again in the advanced economies to see them US and Canada first, but for the developing countries, it opens an important window. And I stop here and turn my colleague to Mr. Sadamori.
Thank you. On the question of kind of the finances, so in producing this report, the IEA conducted the interviews with major financial institutions and confirmed that they're generally positive toward the financing nuclear projects. In their replies, the financial institutions highlighted the government support as a crucial factor in their financing nuclear projects. And as we showed in the final slides of the presentation, the government's long-term commitments, policy supports, streamlining regulatory process without compromising safety levels, and the introduction of de-risking mechanisms would be crucial. When we recall back in 1980s and 1990s, electricity markets were regulated with vertically integrated kind of structures. So this gave kind of a stronger confidence to utilities and investors in terms of the kind of a long-term offtake of the electricity generated from the nuclear power plants. And this no longer exists in the current power market systems with mostly unbundled and competitive nature. So governments must introduce stronger mechanisms for de-risking to enable the private investment in this sector.
Thank you very much, Keisuke. So we're trying to get through as many of these questions as we can. There was another question on SMRs from Matteo Civillini from Climate Home News in terms of what are the main challenges to the large-scale rollout of SMRs. I think we covered some of that. Also, a question on enrichment, which is obviously very important for energy security, from Elise Wu of Montel News. Dr. Birol mentioned that 40% of uranium enrichment capacities are concentrated in Russia. Do you see Europe and France as having a dependency towards Russia for enrichment? Do you think this poses a significant risk? Should Europe or France exit the use of Russian enrichment services? And then we also have a question about nuclear and renewables from Urmi Goswami of the Economic Times in India, asking in terms of costs, upfront capital costs and the cost of power, how does the new nuclear compare with hybrid renewables such as solar and wind plus storage? And how do you rate nuclear in comparison to renewables in terms of supply chain security? Do you see nuclear as the option for large-scale use, such as data centers, but not necessarily as an option for developing countries and their transitions? So a few questions there. And also a question on why the IEA chose to do this report at this point. So perhaps, Keisuke, you could speak a bit about enrichment, and I don't know if there's anything to add on SMR, sorry, you covered that already in some detail, and then Dr. Birol on nuclear and renewables, and finding the right balance there, and why this report at this time. Thank you.
As for the uranium enrichment issues, we understand that France is not dependent upon the Russians, the enriched uranium. Having said so, this is an important issue that requires attention. And we understand that in many countries, in Europe and also in the United States, the efforts are going on for investing in this area for ensuring the kind of expanded enrichment capacity. And this is a very important the issue in terms of ensuring the more diverse and the more resilient supply chains on the nuclear fuels. So this requires attention. On this, the SMRs are kind of challenges. This is already kind of pointed out by our executive director, Dr. Fatih Birol. But the crucial part is that the SMRs cannot enjoy benefit of the economy of scale because of its definition. It's small. So the economic benefit should come from the modularity, from the kind of a mass production in factories, And therefore, as Dr. Birol pointed out, the regulatory approach should adapt to such nature of SMRs. So efficient, standardized systems for the safety approvals based on the internationally harmonized approach would be critically important to allow lower regulatory costs without compromising the safety levels.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sadamori. Just to answer the colleague from the Economic Times in India, the renewables versus SMRs. So, as I said in the beginning, we expect across the world, including the emerging countries, especially in emerging countries, we expect renewables will have the lion's share of the new electricity capacity built around the world. But nuclear is also coming. And it is good in many countries to have a good combination of those, to have a security and diversity of our power mixes. Now, in terms of cost with SMRs, with, as I said, coming to $60–80 per megawatt hour, once again, it is less optimistic than the SMR companies themselves assume. We expect that this price, this level of the SMRs in terms of $60–80 would be cost effective when we compare, for example, solar plus battery storage, or large-scale hydro, or gas turbines, depending on the process. And a country like India, where one imports the natural gas, it may be an important option. One other advantage of SMRs or nuclear power in general is the supply chains, and the compared to renewable technologies, the nuclear requires less critical minerals, as such, less dependent for the availability and the price of critical minerals. So there are pluses and minuses. Each country has to make up their mind without having some dogmatic, in our view, approach to the issues. Countries have their own priorities, economic advantages, disadvantages, and policy choices. And perhaps linking it to the last question, Jethro, why IEA did this study, we just wanted to put the facts on the table in terms of the gigawatts, megawatts, the dollar, and these facts, this data, we hope would help the countries, utilities, financial institutions to make the best choices, first of all, for our planet, for their people, and also for themselves. And I hope we were successful.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Birol, and that is all we have time for now. We've covered as many questions in the time we have, and in fact even gone over time. But if any journalists have questions that didn't get answered in the Q&A, please do reach out to our press office and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So it just remains me to say thank you to Dr. Birol and Keisuke for the presentations and the answers. Thank you to the journalists for all the great questions. And thank you to everyone following this event online for your interest in our work. The full report on the path to a new era for nuclear energy is available for free on our website, so do please take a look. And that's all for today. Thank you and goodbye.